I don't even know where to start with this, or if I'm just completely out of line, but the fallout has been immense and I feel absolutely terrible, while also feeling like I had no other choice. My sibling Jamie, who is 30, and I'm 32, have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, I was always seen as the responsible one, the one who had their head together, while Jamie has always struggled, with school, with jobs, with money, with making good decisions. It felt like our parents, while they loved us both, were constantly preoccupied with Jamie's latest crisis. A failed class, a car breakdown they couldn't afford to fix, losing a job, debt. I remember getting my first part-time job at 16, and a good chunk of my earnings often went towards helping Jamie out with small things, just because our parents would subtly, or not so subtly, suggest I help, or because Jamie would be in genuine distress. It became a pattern. As we got older, the problems escalated. Jamie got into some significant credit card debt in their early 20s, couldn't keep up payments, and was facing wage garnishment. I was just starting my career, living frugally, trying to save for my own future, and I ended up co-signing a consolidation loan for Jamie. The understanding was they would make the payments, and they did, mostly, but there were periods where I had to cover them to protect my own credit. It was stressful, constantly checking to make sure the payment went through. Then there was the car accident a few years ago. Jamie totaled their old car, no comprehensive insurance, and needed a way to get to work. I dipped into my emergency fund, about $4,000 at the time, to help them buy a beat-up but functional car, because they literally had zero savings. I never asked for that money back, and they never offered. It was just helping family. There were countless smaller things over the years, covering rent for a month when they were between jobs, paying for a necessary repair on their place, spot checks here and there when they were short on groceries or had an unexpected bill. It added up significantly over more than a decade. I estimate I've given or lent Jamie or covered expenses. For them, probably upwards of $20,000, $25,000 over the years, plus the stress and risk of co-signing. This is money I could have been saving or investing. Meanwhile, I've been working hard, saving diligently. My partner, Liam, M33, and I have been together for 5 years, living together for 3. We've been planning our future. Our big goal has been buying a house. We live in a high cost of living area, and saving for a down payment has been a monumental task. We've been incredibly disciplined, eating out rarely, taking staycations instead of big trips, driving older cars, cutting expenses wherever possible. We finally reached a point where our savings combined hit the 20% mark for a modest starter home in an area we like. We were scouting neighborhoods, talking to real estate agents, getting pre-approved for a mortgage. It felt like years of sacrifice and hard work were finally paying off. This house isn't just bricks and mortar. It represents security, stability, a future together. It's everything I've worked for, partly because I didn't want to end up in the kind of precarious situations Jamie often found themselves in. This is where the current crisis comes in. Jamie has a child, Leo, who is 5. Jamie's relationship with Leo's other parent ended badly a few years ago, and Jamie has been the primary caregiver. They've been renting a small apartment in a less than ideal neighborhood. It's been tough, but they've been managing barely. A few weeks ago, Jamie called me sobbing. It turns out they had taken out a high-interest loan a while back, maybe a payday loan or something similar, to cover some emergency I didn't even know about. They fell behind on payments. The interest ballooned. And now the lenders are threatening legal action that could result in them losing their apartment, their car, the one I helped them buy, and potentially impacting their ability to provide for Leo. They owe a significant amount, $15,000. Jamie said they had exhausted all other options, tried getting a traditional loan, but were denied due to their credit, asked friends and other family, our parents included, but no one had that kind of money or was willing to lend it. Jamie asked me for the $15,000, just like that. As a loan, they said. They'd pay me back as soon as they could, maybe $100 a month or something similar. My stomach just dropped. $15,000. That's almost half of my share of the down payment money. It's money that actively prevents us from buying a house right now. If I gave Jamie that money, We'd have to delay buying for at least another 2 or 3 years, given how long it took us to save this much, especially with rising housing costs. Liam and I would lose the momentum, potentially miss out on houses. We like as prices keep climbing, and frankly it felt like a punch to the gut after years of scrimping and saving. My initial reaction, which I regret delivering while still in shock, was I can't. Jamie, I just can't. We need that money for the house. It's all of our down payment. Jamie became instantly defensive and then angry. They accused me of being selfish, of prioritizing bricks and mortar over their family's stability, of not caring if their child ended up potentially homeless. They brought up how I've always had things easier, which isn't true. I just made different choices and sacrifices. How I'm finally comfortable, and I'm refusing to help family in a true hour of need. They said I was turning my back on them when they needed me most after all they've been through. Then our parents got involved. Jamie must have called them immediately. I started getting calls and texts from both of them. They laid on the guilt thick. Jamie is your sibling. They need you. Family is everything. You're stable. You can help them. A house can wait. Jamie and Leo cannot. They reminded me of all the times Jamie was there for me. Honestly, I can't recall any major instances that remotely compare to the level of support I've provided. Maybe small emotional support during breakups, but nothing significant or financial. They painted a picture of Jamie as a victim of circumstance, ignoring the pattern of behavior that led to this situation and others in the past. They said I was being cold, calculating, and that this decision would permanently damage our family relationships. I tried to explain my position calmly. I reminded them of the years of financial help I've provided, the loan I co-signed, the emergency fund I drained. I explained how hard Liam and I have worked for this down payment, our sacrifice, and what this house means to us. I said that $15,000 isn't just spare cash for me, it's the key to our future stability. I offered alternatives. I said I would help Jamie find resources, help them research debt consolidation programs not under my name, help them look for cheaper housing options, maybe even give them a small amount like 1K, 2K that wouldn't derail my life. But 15K was impossible. This didn't go over well. Jamie refused my offers of help that didn't involve handing over the cash. They said it was all or nothing, and that clearly I didn't care. Our parents doubled down on the pressure, accusing me of putting my partner and a house above my own sibling and nephew. The fights have been continuous since then. Jamie isn't talking to me directly, only through angry texts or passive-aggressive social media posts that are clearly aimed at me. My parents are deeply disappointed, calling me less frequently, and when they do, the conversation is strained and always circles back to Jamie's situation and my perceived lack of compassion. Liam is supportive of me, telling me I'm making the right choice for us, that I can't keep sacrificing my own life and future to bail Jamie out of self-created problems, especially problems of this magnitude. But seeing how upset I am and the damage to my family relationships is hard on him too. I lie awake at night, replaying the conversations, thinking about Leo, who is an innocent party in all of this, thinking about Jamie's desperation. I know they're in a terrible spot, but I also think about my years of working, saving, saying no to things I wanted, all for this goal. I think about the resentment I've built up over always being the safety net, always being asked to give more when I felt I had already given so much. I think about my future with Liam and the stability we're trying to build, which feels just as important as Jamie's. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between my siblings' immediate crisis, which feels like the culmination of years of avoiding responsibility, and my own future stability and happiness. By choosing myself, my partner, and our future home, I've become the villain in my family's eyes. I feel like the biggest asshole in the world sometimes, like I'm abandoning my family when they need me most. But I also feel like I've finally drawn a necessary boundary after years of being stretched thin, and the backlash is just confirmation of how much they expected me to keep giving indefinitely. Ita for refusing to give my sibling $15K for a debt bailout, knowing it would prevent me from buying a house with my partner, despite years of already supporting them financially, and my family pressuring me intensely. Okay, here goes. I'm trying to lay this out as clearly as I can, but my head is a mess right now, and I know this is going to be long, so please bear with me. I feel like my entire family is tearing itself apart, and I'm somehow the villain in all of it, even though I truly believe I made the only decision I could make, based on the information and circumstances I had. So, I need to know if I was actually the asshole here, if I handled this completely wrong, and if I'm just too wrapped up in my own stress and grief to see it. Let's start with the background. I, 32F, have one sibling, my older brother Mark, 35M. We've always had a complicated relationship. We weren't super close growing up. He was always more outgoing, popular, and got a lot of attention, while I was quieter and more academic. There was some sibling rivalry, typical stuff maybe. But sometimes it felt like he resented my successes, and I sometimes felt invisible compared to him. Our parents, late 60s, always tried to be fair, but Mom definitely had a soft spot for Mark, and Dad was maybe a bit harder on him because he expected more. For the past several years, things have been okay between us. We're adults. We see each other on holidays, exchange texts, the usual. My fiancée, Alex, 34M, who I've been with for 5 years, gets along reasonably well with Mark, though they're not close friends or anything. Now, for the crucial part, our mum. About 3 years ago, Mum was diagnosed with a serious degenerative illness. It's one of those cruel diseases that slowly steals function, one piece at a time. Initially, it was manageable with medication and physical therapy, but over the last year, it's accelerated significantly. She now requires constant care. Dad is her primary caregiver, and he's a saint, truly, doing everything for her. But it's exhausting him, physically and emotionally. Alex and I live about an hour away, and since my job is more flexible than Mark's, he's in sales, lots of travel, I've been going home every weekend for the past year, sometimes more, to help out. I do grocery shopping, cleaning, errands, help Mum with personal care, which is hard for Dad to do alone now, give Dad breaks so he can rest or just leave the house for a bit. Mark lives about 3 hours away and has a demanding job and a busy social life. He visits maybe once every month or two for a weekend, and when he's there, he's helpful, but it's nothing compared to the day-to-day burden or the consistent help I provide. This isn't meant to track points, just to give context on who is involved in what level of care. Alex and I got engaged 18 months ago, and after a long search for venues and coordinating everyone's schedules, we finally set a wedding date. For late spring of next year. It's about 6 months away now. It's a big deal for us, obviously, and we're excited, stressed, all the usual wedding planning emotions. Mum was thrilled about the date. It falls during a period her doctors predicted would be a relatively stable phase in her illness, allowing her to attend, which is incredibly important to all of us, especially her and Dad. We've already sent out save the dates, and deposits are made for the venue, caterer, photographer, etc. Okay, here's where the conflict starts. About 3 months ago, completely out of the blue, Mark announced that he was engaged. We were all surprised but happy for him. We asked about wedding plans, and he seemed vague initially. Then, about 6 weeks ago, he called us all together, me, Alex, Dad, and Mom on speakerphone, to announce his wedding date. He scheduled it for 3 weeks before my wedding. My stomach dropped immediately, but I tried to keep a neutral face. Dad coughed. Mom was quiet. Mark launched into how it was the only date that worked with his fiancée Sarah's family's availability, how the venue was booked solid otherwise, how it was meant to be. He was so excited, totally oblivious, or seemingly oblivious, to the timing. My first thought was Mum. 3 weeks before my wedding is smack in the middle of what her doctors recently informed us would be a critical treatment period. Her illness has progressed faster than anticipated in the last few months, and her medical team has scheduled an intensive series of treatments, including a potential hospital stay and a significant period of recovery and monitoring immediately. Afterwards, this period is physically grueling for her and requires extremely close observation for potential complications. The doctors stressed that during this specific several-week window, she needs minimal stress, maximum rest, and constant proximity to immediate knowledgeable care. Travel, even short distances, would be risky. Being in a chaotic, high-stimulation environment like a wedding reception would be medically unadvisable and, frankly, just impossible for her physically. She's often exhausted, in pain, and needs help with absolutely everything during these flare-ups and treatment phases. My second thought was logistics. My wedding is 3 weeks after his. That's a tight turnaround for anyone attending both, especially those traveling. But for me, the bride, with last-minute planning details, vendor confirmations, final fittings, pre-wedding events, etc. It's a nightmare scenario. But honestly, that was secondary. The real problem was Mum's health. After the call, I spoke to Dad. He was quiet, worried. He confirmed that the date was terrible for Mom's treatment schedule. He said he couldn't possibly leave her to go to Mark's wedding, which is a 3-hour drive away, requires an overnight stay, and would mean being unavailable for 36+ hours during a critical phase. He said he felt awful even thinking about it. But Mum's health had to come first. He asked if I thought it was possible to ask Mark to reschedule. I hesitated. Rescheduling a wedding is huge, I know, but Mum's health is literally a life-and-death situation at this point. I knew Mark and Sarah had put down deposits, but sometimes venues are understanding in extreme circumstances. The next day, I called Mark. I started by saying how happy I was for him and Sarah, how exciting it was. Then I gently brought up the date. I explained as calmly as I could the new information we'd received about Mom's treatment timeline and how crucial that 3-week window is likely to be. I explained what the doctors said about travel and stress. I said, "Mark, I'm really worried about Mom being able to be there, or even Dad really, given the care she'll need. And honestly, with her needing constant care during that exact week, I don't see how Dad can leave her at all, and I also need to be available." This is where it went bad. Mark got instantly defensive. He said, "Are you serious? You want me to change my entire wedding date because Mom might not feel well?" I corrected him. "Mark, it's not might not feel well. It's a scheduled intensive treatment period where she needs constant supervision and care. The doctors have been very clear about the risks." He then accused me of trying to steal his thunder. He said, "This is just typical. My wedding is finally happening, and suddenly there's a crisis that makes it all about Mom and her illness, and conveniently, it's all happening right before your wedding, so everyone will be focused on that instead." I was stunned. "Mark, what are you talking about? This is about Mom's health, not about whose wedding is more important or getting attention. Her life is potentially at stake." He wouldn't listen. He started talking about the money lost on deposits, even though I hadn't even suggested they had to reschedule, only raise the issue. He said Sarah's family would be furious. He said I was being selfish and dramatic. He said I was clearly just stressed about my own wedding and trying to make excuses. The conversation escalated. I finally had to be blunt. I said, "Mark, Dad cannot leave Mom during that specific week. And I also need to be here helping, because that's when she'll be most vulnerable. Realistically, neither Dad nor I can attend your wedding if it's on that date. We just can't leave Mum alone or with inadequate care during that critical phase. Her doctors have advised against it." Silence on the line for a moment, then he exploded. "So you're just not coming? Your own brother's wedding, and you're choosing Mom's illness over me, after all I've done?" I have no idea what he thinks he's done that's relevant here beyond standard sibling stuff. He accused me of never caring about him, of always prioritizing Mom, which, frankly, yes, someone needs to given her condition, and said this was the ultimate betrayal. He said if I wasn't there, he didn't want Dad or Mom there either. A cruel thing to say, knowing Mum couldn't be there anyway. He hung up on me. Since then, it's been awful. Mark isn't speaking to me. He sent me texts, saying he's heartbroken and that I've ruined things. He's told other family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, a version of the story where I'm refusing to come to his wedding because I'm too busy with my own, or because I'm jealous, downplaying Mum's health situation significantly. Some family members have called me trying to mediate. Others clearly think I'm being unreasonable and cold. My own wedding planning feels tainted by all this conflict. Mom found out about the call and was devastated. She cried, saying it was all her fault and maybe she should just skip her treatment so she doesn't ruin Mark's wedding or cause a rift between me and him. This broke my heart, and furious at Mark for putting that burden on her. Dad is stressed, to the max, trying to care for Mom and deal with the family drama. Alex has been incredibly supportive, telling me I made the right decision, that Mom's health is paramount, and that Mark is being completely unreasonable and self-centered. But seeing the fallout, the hurt, the anger, it's making me question everything. Was there a way I could have handled this better? Should I have just kept quiet and then cancelled last minute? Should I have tried harder to persuade Mark to reschedule, even though he was clearly set against it? Should I have somehow tried to find some level of care coverage for Mum that would allow me or Dad to go, even if it meant compromising her safety, or Dad's ability to be there if something went wrong? Was I truly the asshole for prioritizing my critically ill mother's immediate safety and care over attending my brother's wedding, especially when his chosen date fell precisely during the most dangerous period of her treatment and recovery? I need perspective before this completely breaks me. Okay, deep breath. This is going to be long, I apologize in advance, and I'm on a throwaway account for obvious reasons. I've been lurking on this sub forever and never thought I'd actually post, but I am so utterly exhausted and confused and riddled with guilt that I just need outside perspectives because my head is spinning, and I honestly don't know if I'm being a monumentally selfish jerk or if I'm just finally standing up for myself in a way that feels terrible because I'm not used to it. So the situation is with my mother. For background, my mom was a single parent for most of my life. My dad was not in the picture consistently. He'd pop in and out, unreliable at best, and ultimately left permanently when I was in high school. This meant it was just me and Mom, against the world in her words. And it really felt that way sometimes. We didn't have a lot of money and she struggled a lot. Because of this, I grew up feeling like I needed to be the responsible one, almost like a mini adult from a young age. I helped around the house way more than most kids I knew. I took care of myself, and I was always acutely aware of her stress and tried my best not to add to it. This often meant not asking for things, not complaining, and generally trying to be the easy child. I was her confidant, her helper, her emotional support system. She would tell me everything, her worries about money, her relationship troubles, her frustrations with work. It was a heavy burden for a kid, but it felt like my duty, like I was helping her carry the load because there was no one else. As I got older, the dynamic didn't really change. It just shifted. Instead of helping with chores, it was helping her deal with bills, navigating bureaucracy, listening to hours of complaints about her job or friends, and being the primary person she relied on for emotional validation and practical help. If her computer broke, I fixed it. If she needed a ride somewhere, I was it. If she was upset, I was the one she called multiple times a day, needing reassurance. It felt less like a mother-daughter relationship and more like I was her unpaid assistant and therapist. I didn't have much of a social life outside of school because I always felt like I needed to be available, or I was just too drained to go out after a day of managing her emotions or logistics. I always knew I needed to leave. It sounds harsh, but I felt suffocated. I loved my mom, I truly did and do, and I felt immense sympathy for her struggles. But I also felt like I was drowning under the weight of her dependence. My dream was always to move far away, build my own life, where I could just be me, without this constant pressure to manage someone else's world. As soon as I finished college, I got a job offer in a city over 1,000 miles away. It was my escape route. Mom was absolutely devastated. She cried, she guilt-tripped, she said I was abandoning her, that I didn't love her, that she didn't know how she would manage without me. It was incredibly painful to navigate, and I almost caved multiple times. But the desire for my own life was stronger, and I moved. The first few years were tough. I was on my own for the first time, navigating a new city, a new job, and the persistent guilt trips from Mom. The calls didn't stop, though the practical demands decreased slightly just because of the distance. But the emotional demands were still there, constant calls, complaints, needing me to listen and validate her frustration with everything. I worked really hard to build my life here. I focused on my career, made genuine friends, and finally met my partner, Alex. Alex is amazing. They've been so supportive and have helped me understand that the dynamic with my mom wasn't normal, that it's okay to have boundaries, and that my need for independence and peace isn't selfish. Building this life, stable, calm, joyful in its own way, has been the hardest but best thing I've ever done. I finally feel like I can breathe. I feel like an actual adult capable of managing my own life, not just being tethered to someone else's. My relationship with Mom settled into a routine of phone calls and occasional visits from my side. She rarely visits me, citing the difficulty of travel, which I understand, but it means the effort is always on me. The calls are still heavily focused on her problems, and I still feel that pull to fix things or just listen endlessly, but I've gotten better at setting small boundaries, like saying I have to go or changing the subject, although it often leads to her getting upset or passive-aggressive. Now for the current situation, Mum has lived in the same house, the house I grew up in, for over 30 years. It's an old house, requires a lot of maintenance, and honestly it's too big for her now, both financially and physically, to keep up with. She's been talking about selling it someday for years, but always put it off. Finally, about a month ago, she called me sounding completely overwhelmed and said she just couldn't do it anymore. She needed to sell the house now. My immediate reaction was concern and offering support from afar, researching realtors in her area, looking up moving services, offering to help financially with movers, etc. Then she dropped the bomb. She needs me to come home. Not for a visit, not for a week or two. She needs me to come back for at least 2 months. She said she can't possibly sort through everything, pack up 30+ years of stuff, including a lot of hoarded items she's attached, deal with realtors and showings, clean the place out and manage the logistics of moving all by herself. She said she's too stressed. It's too emotional. She needs my physical presence and help. She said I know the house best. I know where things are. I'm the only one she trusts implicitly to help her through this. My stomach just dropped. 2 months. Drop my job. I have limited PTO and certainly not 2 months' worth that I can just take on short notice. My job is demanding, and taking that much time off would seriously jeopardize it. Leave Alex for 2 months? That puts a huge strain on our relationship and our shared life here. More than that, the thought of going back to that house, back to living under her roof for 2 months, falling back into that old dynamic where I'm responsible for her well-being and managing her stress. It gave me a cold dread I haven't felt in years. It feels like going backwards, erasing the life I built, that I fought so hard for. I tried to explain all of this to her, gently at first. I said I understood this was hard, but I couldn't just drop everything and come for 2 months. I reiterated my offers of help from afar. I can manage all the paperwork, set up appointments, research moving companies and cleaners. Hell, I can even try to take care of some things while using my limited vacation time, if absolutely necessary. Maybe a week here or there, but not 2 months living there. I suggested she look into hiring professional organizers or movers who could handle a lot of the physical and logistical burden. I even offered to pay for some of these services myself to alleviate her stress and the financial argument. That's when things escalated. She got incredibly upset. She said I was being heartless, that money isn't the issue, it's her need for me. She said no one else can help her like I can. She brought up everything she did for me as a single mother, all the sacrifices she made, and said this is the one time she's ever really needed me, and I'm refusing. She said I've changed since moving away, that I've become cold and selfish. She accused me of not caring about the house I grew up in, about her feelings. She said I was abandoning her again, just like I did when I moved away initially. She called some other family members, distant aunts and cousins I rarely talked to, and apparently told them some version of the story, because I started getting calls from them too, saying things like, "Your mother really needs you right now, and family helps family, and it's just 2 months, surely you can make it work." The pressure has been immense. I've had multiple calls with her since, and each one spirals into her crying, getting angry, or laying on the guilt trip so thick I can barely breathe. I tried one more time to explain my position calmly, explaining that my job and life here are important and that I am offering help, just not the specific kind she's demanding. I said that while I understand this is a difficult transition for her, it's also a significant disruption she's asking for in my established life. I said that my inability to be there physically for 2 months doesn't mean I don't love her or don't care. This just made her angrier. She said if I wasn't willing to be there for her when she needed me this much, then she didn't know what kind of daughter I was. She even said something really hurtful like maybe she just shouldn't bother and should just give up, implying that my refusal was putting her in danger or something equally dramatic. I finally firmly said that I couldn't come for 2 months, that my offer of remote help and hiring professionals stood, but that was my boundary. The call ended badly, with her crying and saying she didn't know how she would ever forgive me for this. Now she's not really talking to me, just sending short, cold texts. My extended family is giving me the cold shoulder. Alex says I did the right thing, that I can't set myself on fire to keep someone else warm, and that she's asking for an unreasonable sacrifice, but the guilt is absolutely eating me alive. Half of me feels like I finally stood up for my own life and boundaries, something I've struggled with forever, and that her reaction, while painful, is proof that the boundary was necessary. The other half feels like I'm a monster. She's my mother, she raised me, she's going through a difficult emotional time, and she says she desperately needs me, and I said no. Is family obligation supposed to supersede everything else? Did I abandon her when she's most vulnerable? Am I really as selfish and cold as she says I am? I eat her for refusing to drop everything, take potentially career-damaging time off work, and move back home for 2 months to help my mum sell her house, even though she says she desperately needs my physical presence and feels I've abandoned her by saying no. I eat her for booking a cabin week that my sister considers hers because I needed that specific week for a valid reason. Okay, this is blowing up right now, and I need some outside perspective because my entire family is telling me I'm the asshole. But I feel like I'm just standing up for myself and fairness. We, my parents, my sister Sasha, me, and occasionally other extended family like cousins, share a family cabin that my parents own. It's a really old place, been in the family for generations, and it's a huge part of our family life. Growing up, we spent most summers and holidays there. Now that we're adults, my parents are generous and let Sasha, F38, married with 2 young kids, 8 and 6, and me, M35, married to Alex, M36, use it pretty freely as long as we coordinate. The coordination system has always been informal, like really informal. Usually around Easter, when we all get together, someone, usually Dad, will say, "Okay, who wants what weeks at the cabin this year?" And people just call out dates. For as long as I can remember, Sasha has claimed the first 2 weeks of July and the week around Christmas, New Year's, every single year without fail. It's become this unspoken tradition that those weeks are Sasha's weeks. She has kids, and she says those dates work best for their school breaks and summer camps, and the kids look forward to going to the cabin during those specific weeks. As the sibling without kids yet, I always get the leftover time, usually early June, late August, or sometime in the fall or winter, that isn't a major holiday. This has been grating on me for years. It feels incredibly unfair that she automatically gets the absolute prime weeks just because she has children, while my needs and schedule flexibility, or lack thereof in certain windows, are considered secondary. I've brought it up gently before, suggesting we maybe rotate the prime weeks or draw straws, or use an actual calendar system where it's first come, first served fairly, but my parents always brush it off, saying things like, "Oh, just work it out," or "Sasha needs those weeks for the kids, it's easier this way." This year things are different. My partner Alex is a university professor. Their schedule is notoriously difficult for taking significant time off. They get a couple of weeks off during the summer, but it's heavily dictated by the academic calendar, conferences, and research commitments. Usually scheduling a proper vacation for us is a major logistical puzzle. This summer, due to a unique international research opportunity that Alex had to participate in immediately after their semester ended, the only window where they had any significant consecutive time off work, enough for a real vacation together, was exactly the first week of July, specifically July 1st to July 8th. This was a huge deal for us. It was our one shot at having a relaxing summer break together, just the 2 of us, potentially the only real vacation we'd get this year. Knowing the traditional dibs system, I contacted Sasha months in advance, even before Easter dinner rolled around. I explained Alex's situation in detail, why this specific week was our only option for a vacation, how important it was to us. I asked if she would be willing to trade her usual first week of July for a different prime week, maybe the last week of June, which was free at the time, or the third week of July, also free, or even just take the second week of July instead of the first. I emphasized that our need for this exact week was not about preference but about necessity due to Alex's job constraints. Sasha's response was immediate, indignant, and completely inflexible. "Absolutely not," she said. "The first 2 weeks of July are our weeks. The kids look forward to them all year. It's tradition, you know this. Why do you always have to make things difficult? You can take a different week. Just pick something else." I reiterated that other weeks didn't work for Alex, that this was our only window. I tried to reason with her about fairness, about how the tradition isn't really a tradition as much as it is her unilateral claim to the best dates year after year. I even suggested again that this year, maybe just for July, we could draw straws or flip a coin to make it equitable, since our need was so specific. She got angry, accused me of trying to ruin her kids' summer, said I was selfish because I don't have kids so I don't understand, and that I was just trying to stir up trouble and break with family ways. I brought the issue to my parents. I laid it all out. Alex's schedule, our limited window, my attempts to negotiate with Sasha, her refusal, the history of unfair booking. I asked if they could step in and help mediate or propose a fair system for this year given the circumstances. My parents, bless them, are conflict-averse. They basically just sighed, said, "Oh, OP, can't you just let Sasha have it? It's easier. Find another week," even after I explained again that there was no other week that worked for Alex's vacation. Time. Their final stance was essentially, "Well, maybe you just can't go to the cabin this summer if that's the only week you can do." This felt like a punch to the gut. It was incredibly frustrating and unfair. We had a genuine, important need for that specific week, tied to Alex's inflexible work schedule, while my sister's claim was based solely on tradition and preference, despite her having other potential summer weeks she could use. After days of this going back and forth, with Sasha refusing to budge and my parents offering no support or path to fairness, I made a decision. My dad actually maintains a very simple online calendar system for the cabin. It's mostly used by cousins who do maintenance or need official access codes, not typically by us kids for booking vacations, which has always been the informal verbal dibs thing. However, it is the official record. I checked the calendar. The first week of July was technically empty. Sasha had only claimed it verbally at Easter. She hadn't put it on the official system yet, probably because she assumes, correctly, until now that nobody would ever challenge her. I went online and booked the first week of July, July 1st, 8th, for me and Alex. I put our names on the official calendar. Within hours, my phone started blowing up. First, a furious call from Sasha, screaming that I was an underhanded snake, that I had betrayed her, that I was ruining her children's summer and their traditions, that I had intentionally gone behind her back after she said no. Then calls from my parents, incredibly disappointed, saying I'd caused a huge family fight unnecessarily, that I was being selfish and inconsiderate, that I should just concede to Sasha and move our dates, again impossible. Then texts and calls from other family members who had heard about it, expressing shock and disapproval, asking why I would do such a thing, don't I know those are Sasha's weeks, etc. My sister is now declaring she won't bring her kids to the cabin at all this summer, if we are going to be there during any week, because she says I've poisoned the whole idea for her. My parents are caught in the middle, but clearly leaning towards Sasha's side and pressuring me to back down to keep the peace. I feel completely justified. This is the only week that works for Alex and me to have a vacation together. The tradition is just Sasha's entitlement masquerading as custom, enabled by my parents. I tried to be reasonable, negotiate, find alternatives, and suggest a fair system, and I was dismissed and told I just couldn't have a vacation. So I used the actual booking system that my dad maintains, which was technically open. The cabin belongs to my parents. They give all their children permission to use it, and I booked an available week through the official channel. But everyone is so upset and angry at me. They're saying I deliberately created drama, was selfishly rigid about the dates, and broke family trust and tradition. So, AITA for booking the first week of July at the family cabin, knowing my sister considers those weeks hers and always gets them, because it was the only week that worked for my partner's very limited vacation schedule, after I had tried and failed to negotiate a different outcome with my sister and parents. Okay, here goes. Prepare yourself, this is a long one. Like really long. I'm sitting here drafting this because I genuinely don't know if I'm the bad guy in a situation that's currently tearing my wife's family apart and has pretty much destroyed my relationship with my mother-in-law and at least one of her siblings. It's a mess. It all revolves around a property, sort of a cabin vacation home, that has been in my wife Sarah's family for over 50 years. It's not fancy, not some sprawling mansion, but it's substantial. 4 bedrooms, on a decent piece of land. Nothing waterfront, but maybe 20 minutes from a lake that's popular in the summer. It's the kind of place steeped in memories for Sarah and her 2 siblings, David and Emily. Holiday gatherings, summer weekends, all that nostalgic stuff. The legal ownership has always been a bit loose. It was initially owned by Sarah's grandparents. When they passed away, it technically transferred to their 3 children, Sarah's mom, Eleanor, and her 2 brothers, my wife's uncles. However, for various reasons that are fuzzy even to Eleanor, one uncle signed over his share entirely, and the other agreed to put his share mostly in Eleanor's name, with some informal agreement that it was still the family cabin and his descendants would have access or claim later. So for the last 30 years, Eleanor has been the primary, almost sole name on the deed. This is crucial later. When Sarah and I got married about 15 years ago, the cabin was rough. It had been neglected for years. The roof leaked in one section, the kitchen was straight out of the 70s and falling apart. The main bathroom had serious plumbing issues, and the heating system was ancient and inefficient. It was usable technically, but required significant work. Eleanor didn't have the funds or the physical ability to do the work herself, and honestly, neither David nor Emily were in a position to contribute much, financially or with labor. David was, and still is, struggling financially, always bouncing between jobs and dealing with debt. Emily is doing okay, but lives several hours away and has her own family and responsibilities. Sarah and I, however, were in a better place. We both have stable, well-paying jobs. More importantly, we love the idea of having access to a family cabin. We pictured bringing our future kids there, continuing the family tradition, creating our own memories. We talked to Eleanor, David, and Emily. We proposed a plan. We would undertake significant renovations and repairs to the cabin. We wouldn't ask for ownership formally transferred to us proportional to our investment, because we understood it was the family cabin. But we asked for a clear understanding that our financial and labor contribution would be significant, and the cabin would remain accessible to all, with us taking on the primary role of maintenance and upkeep moving forward. Everyone agreed. It felt like a fair deal. We got the benefit of using a much improved property, and the family asset was preserved and enhanced without burdening the others, and we poured money into it. We weren't just slapping on paint. We replaced the entire roof, a massive expense. We gutted and completely redid the kitchen, new cabinets, appliances, flooring, everything. We fixed the plumbing issues and renovated the main bathroom. We replaced the archaic heating system with something modern and efficient. We upgraded the electrical panel to handle modern demands. We landscaped the yard, built a small deck. We furnished it comfortably. Over the course of about 10 years, we conservatively estimate we put in over $150,000 into that cabin, maybe closer to $200,000 if you factor in our own labor. And we did a lot ourselves, saving on contractor costs where possible, but still spending heavily on materials. We kept receipts for everything, not because we planned for this situation, but just for our own budgeting. We paid the property taxes for several years too, when Eleanor was particularly strapped. David helped with labor maybe twice for a few hours each time, and contributed maybe $500 total over the decade. Emily visited occasionally and brought food, but zero financial or labor contribution to the actual renovations. Eleanor contributed. Nothing financially. Maybe bought a few small decorative items over the years. The cabin became beautiful. It went from being a slightly dilapidated, uncomfortable old place to a genuinely lovely, comfortable retreat. We used it frequently, as did Sarah's siblings and their families, and Eleanor. We maintained it, paid for repairs that cropped up, covered the utility bills often. It really did feel like our second home, while still being available to the family. The understanding, unspoken but seemingly clear through our actions, and the family's passive acceptance of our investment was that we had essentially bought a significant stake in the property, even if the deed didn't reflect it. Fast forward to about 6 months ago. Helena, who is now in her early 70s, has some unexpected medical bills and is realizing her retirement savings aren't stretching as far as she hoped. She calls a family meeting with Sarah, David, and Emily. She announces she wants to sell the cabin. This hit us hard. Not just the emotional aspect of losing the family place, but the financial one. We had invested so much, we immediately brought this up. We said we understood her need to sell, assuming it was necessary for her financial security, but we needed to discuss how the proceeds would be distributed, given the massive investment we had made. Eleanor's proposal blindsided us. She proposed selling the cabin and splitting the net proceeds, after realtor fees and closing costs, 5 ways. Herself, Sarah, David, Emily, and the descendants of her deceased brother, the one who signed away his share. Apparently there was some lingering guilt or informal promise there. Let's say the cabin, in its improved state thanks almost entirely to our work, sells for $400,000. After costs, maybe $370,000 net. Divided 5 ways, that's $74,000 each. We were stunned. I think I actually laughed initially because it seemed so preposterous. Sarah was quieter, but her face was pale. I explained as calmly as I could muster that this didn't acknowledge our investment of over $150,000. I said that before any split, our documented investment needed to be recouped. Eleanor refused point blank. Her argument was that it was her cabin, her name on the deed inherited from her parents. She acknowledged we did work on it, but framed it as us wanting to use it and making it nice for ourselves, and that the money we spent was essentially rent or payment for the use and enjoyment we got out of it over the years. She said splitting it 5 ways was the fair way to distribute the family asset among her children and her brother's lineage, regardless of who put money into renovations. David immediately agreed with her, saying it was Mum's property and she could do what she wanted, and hinting that he could really use his share right now. Emily was quieter, expressing discomfort but not outright disagreeing with Eleanor. The conversation devolved quickly. I pulled out the folders of receipts, offering to go through them, refused to look. She got defensive, raised her voice, accused me of trying to take money from her and from her less fortunate children. Sarah tried to mediate, suggesting maybe we get back a percentage of our investment, not necessarily all of it before the split. Eleanor wouldn't budge. She kept repeating, "It's my house. I can do what I think is fair." Fair? Fair felt like getting back the money we sunk into her asset that increased its value exponentially, before dividing what was left of the original value, or maybe splitting the profit from the sale after deducting our costs. $74,000 back on a $150,000 plus investment felt like a massive loss, essentially subsidizing her retirement and David's financial issues with our hard-earned money. I finally looked at Eleanor and David and said, "Eleanor, we put over $150,000 into this cabin based on the understanding that it was a family asset we were helping preserve and improve for the long term. If you sell it and don't repay our documented investment first, that's not a fair distribution of a family asset. That's you keeping our investment and giving us back less than half of it. If you insist on this distribution method, we will have to consider all our options, including seeking legal counsel to recover our investment." Boom, nuclear option. Sarah looked like she was going to faint. Eleanor became furious. She said I was threatening her, that I was trying to steal from her own family, that Sarah had married someone who only cared about money. David started yelling at me, calling me greedy and an asshole for trying to screw over his mom and him. Emily actually quietly left the room. The meeting ended with shouting and tears. We left. Since then, communication has been minimal and frosty. Eleanor won't speak to me at all and barely speaks to Sarah, giving her the cold shoulder and classic guilt trips about causing family division. David sends Sarah angry texts about my greedy husband. Emily hasn't taken a side publicly, but seems sympathetic to Sarah's stress. Sarah is devastated. She feels caught between her mother and me. She agrees that her mother's proposed split is unfair and that we are owed our investment back. But she is terrified of permanently damaging her relationship with her family, particularly her mother. She is begging me to just accept Eleanor's terms, take the $74K, and walk away from the rest for the sake of family peace. She argues that pursuing legal action would cost a fortune, take years, and guarantee that she would be estranged from her mother and David forever. She says the emotional cost isn't worth the money. I see her point about the emotional cost, I really do. It pains me to see her in so much pain, but I cannot stomach the idea of just giving away over $75,000 to her mother and brother who contributed almost nothing, simply because Eleanor has her name on a piece of paper and a sense of entitlement, and David is bad with money. That money represents years of our sacrifices, things we didn't buy, vacations we didn't take, extra hours we worked. It feels fundamentally wrong, like being stolen from by family. My principle here is that family shouldn't fleece family, and what they are proposing feels exactly like that. I feel like backing down sets a precedent that it's okay to take advantage of us because we're family. I've told Sarah I love her and I hate that she's hurting, but I cannot agree to just letting that much money go without a fight. I said my bottom line is that we get our verifiable expenses back before any further distribution. If Eleanor agrees to that, fine, we drop the legal threat. If she doesn't, I feel we have to pursue it. Sarah is heartbroken and says I'm prioritizing money over family. Her mother is telling everyone who will listen that I'm a manipulative asshole trying to steal from her. David is calling me names. So, Reddit, here it is. Am I the asshole for refusing to cave to my mother-in-law's unfair distribution plan for the cabin sale, demanding our significant investment back first, and threatening legal action to recover our funds, knowing this will likely cause a permanent rift in my wife's family? Or am I just standing up for what's right and fair after being taken advantage of? Eta. Okay, deep breath. I'm posting this because I honestly don't know anymore. My entire family is coming down on me like a ton of bricks, calling me selfish, cold, and ungrateful. But I feel like I'm finally standing up for myself, even if it feels incredibly wrong and is causing immense pain. My mom Brenda is technically homeless or about to be, and she wants to move in with me. I told her no, a firm, unequivocal no. Now everyone is saying I'm the biggest asshole in the world. This isn't a sudden crisis for her. Brenda has struggled her whole adult life with keeping jobs, managing money, and just adulting. It's always been a cycle: gets a place, loses a job, can't pay rent, gets evicted or has to leave, crashes with someone, finds another place, cycle repeats. It's like she's allergic to stability and responsibility. Growing up was chaotic. Bills were often late or unpaid. We moved constantly. There were always different people crashing on our couch. As soon as I was old enough, I started working to help out, first odd jobs as a teenager, then full-time work immediately after high school, because college wasn't an option with our financial situation. For years, I was the default bailout person. If she needed money for rent, I'd cobble it together. If she needed help moving again, I'd take time off work and rent a truck. If she needed a place to stay for just a few days, I'd squeeze her into my tiny apartment, which inevitably turned into weeks, sometimes months. Each time it was disruptive, stressful, and often ended with some kind of argument or drama because she wouldn't contribute, wouldn't look for jobs consistently, or would just generally treat my place like a hotel, with free room and board. I remember one time she stayed for 2 months, promising to pay me back for the extra groceries and utilities, but never did. Another time she brought home a stray cat without asking, knowing I'm allergic, because she felt sorry for it. I ended up having to rehome it, which caused a huge fight. It's like my needs, my space, my rules didn't matter. Her convenience and immediate, often poorly thought-out impulses always came first. It's exhausting, emotionally and financially draining. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. Every time I'd start to get my head above water, there would be a new crisis, and I'd feel obligated to jump back in and try to save her, even though it felt increasingly futile and detrimental to my own life. My own journey hasn't been easy. I didn't have family support for college, worked multiple jobs, lived in terrible apartments, saved every penny from meager paychecks after covering my own basic expenses and often sending a little extra to my mom. For the last 5 years, my absolute focus has been saving for a down payment on a small condo. It's my light at the end of the tunnel, my path to stability and owning something secure, something that can't be taken away because of someone else's choices. It's my escape hatch from the constant uncertainty I grew up with. I've lived like a monk, no vacations, driving a beat-up car, cooking every meal at home, skipping nights out with friends. It's been hard, a constant exercise in delayed gratification. But I've finally hit 80% of my goal, a substantial chunk of money that represents years of extreme sacrifice and discipline. I'm months away from potentially being able to buy a place of my own. About a week ago, I got the call. Brenda was tearful, frantic. Her landlord gave her notice. She hadn't paid rent in 3 months, lost her job again. Something about being late too many times. The details were vague, but the underlying reason is always the same, and had nowhere to go. She started talking about needing just a little while to get back on her feet, needing a place to stay while she sorted things out, and the implication was crystal clear. Move in with me. Permanently, or at least indefinitely, until she ran my life or savings into the ground based on past experience. She doesn't have other options. Her few friends can't take her long-term. She's burned bridges with other family members by borrowing money and not paying it back. And my brother Chris has always been better at expressing sympathy than offering practical help that inconveniences him. My stomach dropped. My first instinct, the 1 years of conditioning have ingrained in me, was, how can I help? But then the other voice, the one I've been cultivating, the voice of self-preservation and the need for my own future, screamed louder. I looked at my savings tracker on my fridge, thought about the peaceful, stable little apartment I'd made mine after so much struggle, the one space that is truly mine and safe, and I knew I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. Letting her move in would mean using some of my savings just to accommodate having another person here. Food, utilities, maybe even needing a bigger place eventually, if temporary, stretched for years like it has before. It would mean losing the quiet, focused environment I need to work and finish saving. And it would mean opening the door to the emotional roller coaster and disrespect that has always accompanied her staying with me. It would derail my dream of owning a home. Years of sacrifice gone. I took a deep breath and told her, as gently but as firmly as I could, that I couldn't take her in. I explained why. I'm saving for a down payment and can't risk those funds. My place is small, a 1-bedroom, and doesn't have space for another adult long-term without us being on top of each other constantly. And honestly, I need my space and stability after years of feeling like I was constantly bracing for her next crisis. I told her I loved her and wanted her to be okay, but I couldn't sacrifice my future and my hard-won peace. She didn't take it well. Crying turned quickly to anger. How could I do this? She's my mother. After all she did for me, cue vague claims of sacrifice that involved feeding and housing me as a child, which is, baseline parenting. Where is she supposed to go? Am I just going to leave her on the street? Does my savings account matter more than her well-being? Then the calls and texts started. From my brother Chris, who lives in a 3-bedroom house with his wife and 2 kids, but always conveniently has a reason why he can't take her in. My wife's working from home and needs quiet. The kids need structure and routine. We just don't have the space, which objectively they do, just not a separate bedroom. He said I have the least complicated life, single, no kids, so I should be the one to step up. From my aunt, her sister, who's always enabled Brenda but never actually provided long-term solutions herself, just sympathy and judgment for anyone who sets boundaries. From cousins I barely talk to, who heard about it through the family grapevine. They're all saying the same thing, variations on a theme. I'm abandoning my mother in her time of need. I'm selfish. I'm prioritizing money, my savings, over family. How can I sleep at night knowing my mother is potentially homeless because I shut the door on her? They're painting me as this cold, calculating person who cares more about numbers in a bank account than her own flesh and blood. My aunt even said blood is thicker than water and that I'll regret this when she's gone. It hurts. Believe me, it does. The guilt is immense. Part of me feels like a terrible child, like I'm failing a fundamental moral test. My stomach is in knots. But another part, the part that has worked so incredibly hard for everything I have, the part that has finally found a semblance of peace and financial security after a lifetime of chaos, knows that letting her move in would be signing up for another several months, potentially years, of chaos, financial strain, and emotional burden that would absolutely derail my future plans and likely leave me right back where I started, maybe even worse off because she has no plan beyond live with Alex. There's no job search strategy, no financial planning, no acknowledgement of her role in getting here. It would be exactly like every other time, just longer and harder, and I fear I would never recover my financial or emotional stability. I've suggested resources. I spent hours researching local shelters, social services that help with emergency, housing and job search, temporary motel vouchers programs I found online. I even offered to help find resources or pay for a few nights in a cheap motel while she figures things out. But she and the family dismiss this. They don't want resources or temporary help. They want my place, the long-term, no rent, no rules option, where she can just exist without having to fix the underlying problems. They see my savings as a communal fund she's entitled to tap into, and my apartment as a free hotel suite. So here I am, the heartless child who won't open her door to her homeless mother. My phone is blowing up with accusatory messages. I barely slept last night because of the guilt and the anger at being cornered like this. Is this really the line? After years of helping to my own detriment, is protecting my future and my hard-won stability. After decades of trying to help someone who consistently refuses to help herself, truly being an asshole. Ate for refusing to let my financially irresponsible and now homeless mother move in with me indefinitely, knowing it would jeopardize my ability to save for a down payment on a condo and disrupt the stability I've finally achieved after years of hardship. Okay, Reddit, I need some perspective. I feel like I'm going crazy, torn between what everyone in my family is telling me and what feels right in my gut. This is one of those drawn-out, complicated family sagas that's been simmering for years, but just boiled over into something I don't even know how to fix, or if I'm the one who broke it in the first place. My brother Ben and I are only 2 years apart, but we've always been on different paths. Growing up, he was the charmer, the easygoing one, the one who sailed through school without trying too hard but always landed on his feet, mostly thanks to Mom and Dad swooping in. I was the quieter, more anxious one, the one who studied late, worked minimum-wage jobs through college, and planned every single step obsessively because I didn't have that same cushion or innate luck Ben seemed to possess. Our parents were always there for Ben, financially, emotionally, digging him out of scrapes, a failed business venture here, a stack of parking tickets there, needing help with rent. They always provided. They'd often frame it as helping family, but it usually meant diverting resources, time and energy towards Ben's issues. I remember them taking out a small second mortgage on their house years ago to bail him out of a debt he'd racked up from something shady he wouldn't even fully explain. They never asked me for money then, but the tension it created, the way they worried, it was a constant presence. I saw firsthand the stress his choices put them under. Meanwhile, I was building my own life, brick by brick. I chose a stable, not glamorous career path that required years of education and hard work. I lived frugally, saved aggressively, and made smart financial decisions. I bought a modest house in a decent area a few years ago, something I managed entirely on my own with my savings and a manageable mortgage. I don't drive a fancy car. I don't go on extravagant vacations. My clothes are practical. My idea of a splurge is maybe eating out once a week or buying a new book. I value security and independence above all else, because I know exactly how hard I worked to get here, and the anxiety of not having that safety net. Ben, on the other hand, has bounced between jobs and get-rich-quick ideas that never pan out. He's married to Chloe, who is lovely in theory, but seems to share his approach to life. Everything will just magically work out, and if it doesn't, well, someone will help them. They live paycheck to paycheck, sometimes less than that, often relying on short-term loans or credit cards to bridge gaps, which just digs them deeper. My parents still help them out regularly with smaller things, groceries, a bill here and there, fixing their car. This brings us to the current situation. About 2 months ago, Ben called me, which in itself is unusual unless he needs something. After some awkward small talk, he got to the point. He and Chloe had found what they were convinced was a ground floor opportunity, something vaguely related to app development and online marketing. It sounded incredibly shaky to me, based on what little detail he gave, with projections that felt plucked straight from thin air. The catch? They needed significant capital to get it off the ground, for software, marketing, maybe even just to cover their living expenses, while they supposedly worked on nothing but this. The amount he asked for was staggering to me. $100,000. My stomach dropped. $100,000. That's more than half of my total savings. That's years of scrimping and saving, of saying no to things, of working extra hours. It's my emergency fund, a big chunk of my retirement savings, and the cushion that lets me sleep at night knowing I'm secure. I didn't say yes immediately. I think I just stammered for a bit, trying to process the sheer scale of it. He launched into his pitch, full of buzzwords and optimistic predictions, completely glossing over the risks or their lack of experience in this field. He talked about how this would finally be their chance, how he'd pay me back with interest within a year, and how this was family helping family to achieve a dream. Chloe got on the phone too, full of enthusiasm, and talking about how I'd be their angel investor, who believed in them when no one else did. Which, frankly, was probably because no one else thought it was a good idea or was willing to risk that much. I told him I needed time to think. He seemed surprised, almost annoyed. Think? What's there to think about? You have it, Alex. We need it. It's family. That phrase. You have it. It hit me hard. Like my money isn't mine, earned through hard work and sacrifice, but just some fungible resource I'm hoarding while family is in need. I spent the next few days agonizing. I looked at my finances, my plans, my goals. I thought about Ben's history, his track record of failed ventures and relying on others. I thought about Chloe, whose financial habits seemed even worse than his. I thought about the stress on my parents over the years, and I thought about that one time about 8 years ago when Ben was facing a major financial crisis, not business-related but something personal and serious. He asked me for a substantial loan then, around $20,000. I agonized over that too, but ultimately I lent him the money. It took him 4 years to pay it back, and only after repeated, awkward reminders from me and eventually intervention from our parents. It wasn't malicious, just low priority for him. Knowing that history, risking $100,000, felt less like an investment in a promising venture and more like throwing a giant pile of my hard-earned money into a bonfire. I called him back a few days later. I tried to be gentle but firm. I told him that I couldn't lend him that amount of money. I explained that it represented a significant portion of my life savings, money I needed for my own long-term security and responsibilities. I told him honestly that, based on past experience and the riskiness of the venture, I wasn't confident in their ability to repay such a large sum, and I wasn't in a position to lose that money. I suggested they look into small business loans or angel investors who specialize in tech startups and do proper due diligence, or scale back their plans, or even consider if this was the right path for them right now. That's when the floodgates opened. Ben was furious. He accused me of being selfish, of turning my back on family, of thinking I'm better than him just because I have money. He brought up the past, not the time I lent him money and it took forever to get back, but apparently, according to him, how easy I'd had it, how I never faced the real-world struggles he did, completely ignoring the fact that I worked my butt off in the real world to avoid exactly those struggles. He twisted my words, saying I was calling him a failure and irresponsible. Then the calls started coming from my parents. First, Mom, her voice dripping with disappointment. Alex, honey, calling your brother irresponsible. How could you? He's just trying to get ahead. She said I was being cold and unfeeling. She reminded me of everything they'd done for me growing up, which, yes, they were good parents and provided for us, but it wasn't like they were financing some lavish lifestyle for me while Ben struggled. She told me family helps family no matter what. Then Dad called, less emotional but more stern. He said I had an obligation to help Ben, that I had more than enough, and it wasn't right to hoard it while my brother was trying to build something. He said Ben was my brother, and wasn't that bond more important than money? He even brought up his own parents helping his siblings in the past and how that's just what you do. They completely dismissed my concerns about the risk, about my own financial security, about Ben's history. All they saw was that I had money and Ben needed it, therefore I was obligated to give it to him. They kept saying 100K is nothing to you, which is so far from the truth it's laughable and infuriating. They acted like I was asking Ben for the money, not the other way around. Chloe started sending me passive-aggressive texts about how much this opportunity meant to them, how heartbroken Ben was by my lack of faith, and how they just couldn't believe I'd leave family hanging. The pressure has been relentless for weeks. Calls, texts, veiled comments during family video chats, which I've started avoiding. It's poisoned every interaction. My parents are acting distant and hurt. Ben and Chloe are openly hostile, refusing to talk to me unless it's to send a message. Other extended family members, who have only heard my parents' or Ben's side, Alex, who is rolling in money, refused to help poor Ben get a business off the ground, have started giving me disapproving looks or making pointed remarks. I'm exhausted. I feel isolated. A part of me, the part that has been conditioned by years of family first and seeing my parents constantly help Ben, wonders if they're right. Maybe I am being selfish. Maybe I do have enough, and prioritizing my own future over my brother, risking money I earned is cold-hearted. Maybe the bond of family should mean sacrificing my financial security, or a huge chunk of it, without question, especially when they're framing it as chasing a dream, not just bailing him out, even if it feels like the latter. But then I look at my budget. I think about the years I spent building what little security I have, and I remember the stress of that previous loan repayment. I think about how entitled Ben and Chloe acted, the complete lack of understanding, or even curiosity about my own financial situation or goals. I think about my parents, enabling Ben for decades, and now expecting me to pick up the slack on this scale. It feels like a huge boundary violation, a demand rather than a request, and a complete disregard for my own efforts and needs. I refuse to give them the money. They haven't dropped it entirely, but it's morphed into this cold war where I'm the pariah. I feel immense guilt because my family is so upset with me, but I also feel a deep sense of resentment and frustration that they would put me in this position and react this way when I said no. So, Reddit, I need an objective judgment. With all the context, Ben's history, my parents' involvement, the amount of money, my reasons for saying no and their reaction, was I the asshole for refusing to give my brother and his wife $100,000 for their business idea? 32F, I'm a software engineer and I've been working from home since the start of the pandemic. My husband, 35M, and I have been married for 5 years, and we have a 2-year-old daughter. My husband also works from home as a marketing manager. Since the start of the pandemic, I have been struggling to balance my work and taking care of our daughter. I would often end up working late into the night after putting our daughter to bed. My husband, on the other hand, would finish his work by 5 p.m. and would spend the rest of the evening watching TV or playing video games. I brought up this issue with my husband several times, expressing my frustration and exhaustion. I asked him to help out more with taking care of our daughter, so I could have some time to focus on my work. He agreed and would occasionally take our daughter for a walk or play with her in the park. However, most of the time, I was still the one taking care of her. One day I was particularly stressed and overwhelmed with work. I had a deadline coming up, and I was struggling to meet it. I asked my husband if he could take our daughter to the park for a few hours so I could work. He agreed, but when the time came, he seemed hesitant and kept making excuses. I ended up getting frustrated and raised my voice at him, telling him that I needed his help and that he wasn't taking my requests seriously. He got defensive and accused me of not appreciating the things he does for our family. He said that he works hard to provide for us and that I should be grateful. I tried to explain to him that I do appreciate him, but that I also need his help with taking care of our daughter. I told him that I can't keep working late into the night and that I need some time during the day to focus on my work. He then accused me of prioritizing my work over our daughter and our family. He said that I was never around when our daughter needed me and that I was always on my computer. I tried to explain to him that I was only working during the day so I could spend time with our daughter in the evenings, but he didn't seem to understand. He then said that he was going to take our daughter to his mother's house for the day so I could work. I was relieved that he was taking the initiative to help out, but I also felt guilty for not being able to take care of our daughter myself. I thanked him and he left with our daughter. When he came back home, he seemed distant and cold. He didn't say much to me and went straight to his office to work. I tried to talk to him about it, but he just shrugged me off and said that he was fine. I could tell that something was off, but I didn't know what to do. Days turned into weeks, and our relationship became strained. We barely talked to each other, and when we did, it was always about work or our daughter. I missed the way we used to connect and communicate with each other. I tried to initiate conversations and plan dates, but he always seemed too busy or uninterested. One day I came across a post on Reddit about a similar situation. The OP was asking if she was the asshole for getting frustrated with her husband, for not helping out more with taking care of their child. I read through the comments and saw that many people were siding with the OP and agreeing that her husband should be helping out more. I felt a sense of validation and relief, but I also felt guilty for feeling that way. I started to wonder if I was the asshole in this situation. Maybe I was being too demanding and unappreciative. Maybe I should be more understanding and patient with my husband. I decided to talk to my husband about it and apologize for my behavior. I told him that I appreciated everything he does for our family and that I understand that he works hard, too. I asked him if we could find a way to better balance our work and family responsibilities. He seemed surprised and relieved to hear me say that. He apologized for not helping out more and for not understanding my perspective. He said that he thought he was doing enough and that he didn't realize how overwhelmed I was. We talked about our schedules and figured out a way to divide the responsibilities more evenly. Since then, our relationship has improved and we have been able to better balance our work and family life. We take turns taking care of our daughter and supporting each other's careers. I am grateful for my husband's help and understanding, and I am glad that we were able to communicate and work through our issues. In hindsight, I realize that I could have handled the situation better. I could have been more patient and understanding, and I could have communicated my needs more effectively. I also realize that it's important to appreciate and acknowledge the efforts of our partners, even if they may not be perfect. So, Aita, for getting frustrated with my husband for not helping out more with taking care of our daughter. I don't think so, but I do think that there were things I could have done differently to improve the situation. Communication and understanding are key in any relationship, and I am grateful that my husband and I were able to work through our issues and find a solution that works for us.